Am I upside down or I'm all good? Okay. Now, like I said, I'm running two live broadcasts, one from my laptop using Google Hangouts on air. So hello everyone on Google and YouTube. And I'm running one, fabulous, good to know, from Periscope as well. Neither of you can see each other. So if it looks like I'm talking to the wrong camera, you'll know why, okay? Thanks so much for joining us, and I'm joined here today by Zona. Zona is a Thermomix consultant, group leader, whatever, extraordinaire. She's just like, she just kills it on Thermomix. Me, I'm officially a consultant, so you can talk to me about it, but my knowledge about Thermomix is fairly limited to essentially what I've been experimenting with. My specialty is Malaysian cooking. Until about 2-3 months ago, I had no idea what a Thermomix was. I thought it was essentially a glorified, very expensive food processor and blender. For those who don't know, this is what it looks like over here. And I found out through Zona, the great thing about it is that it not only mills and processes and blends and everything, which is what I tend to see a lot of Westerners use it for, right? Okay, they use it to make mayonnaise and make their own homemade stuff. Smoothies, that sort of stuff, which I thought, well, I don't really eat that sort of stuff. But, it gave me an idea when I found out it actually cooks for you as well. So the great thing about it, one of the biggest frustrations to me with Asian cooking, and I've been doing Asian cooking for years and years now, one of the biggest frustrations for me is having to stand over a hot stove and stirring things and having it spit all over, okay? So the cleanup is almost as bad as anything else, right?
Or even having a blender, like the traditional way you would use a pesto mortar to get the finest paste.
Yeah.
Whereas, or if you do it the modern way with a blender, it's never strong enough to get the quality that you're after, especially for Jackie. She does a lot of things commercially, so things like lemongrass and all that. But when Jackie, I told Jackie about the Thermomix, I said, let's pick a dish and try it out. I think the first thing we tried was Jackie's Nyonya Laksa. And everything was made, the paste straight from here and cooked in here. And she was just amazed that she didn't have splatters all over her kitchen. So
I mean, I'm not going to claim, Zona is like a 200% Thermomix devotee, right? Me, I'm still feeling my way around it a little bit. I'm not going to claim that it solves all your cooking problems. It's not going to do a lot of things that, I do with my cooking, okay? So you do have to play around with it. To me, even if all it does is mill the kind of like lemongrass and galanga, all these really tough fibrous roots and vegetables for me, that's good enough. If I then have to transfer it into something to cook, to finish off the cooking process, that to me works just as well.
Sounds like a really good machine.
Oh, it is. Yeah. It was a great investment. It replaces a whole. I actually just over the last few days, I actually cleared out my warehouse because I'm just rejigging my business a little bit. But I had this old food processor and it has so many attachments, most of which I had never touched because I forget which joins up with which blade goes where, which lid goes where, and that sort of stuff. And it took up a milk crate, one of those Aussie milk crates, and it was just brimming and it was overflowing with all the different attachments for this particular blender food processor that I never made full use of because it was, and also it just didn't really have the kind of like muscle that I needed for it to be able to blend a lot of my spices properly. But before I could just carry on all day, but I don't want to hold everyone up. What we are making today is something called Tri Kueh in Singapore. If I know people like Stephen, Ameriporian, everyone follow him, he's a great guy. He's a huge fan of Singapore, he's American. But people like Stephen would probably know the nuances of the different migrant groups within Malaysia and Singapore. But Singapore is more Hokkien than a lot of parts of Malaysia, certainly the part that I grew up in. Okay, so I tend to know Hakka and Cantonese. Singapore and Penang up north in Malaysia is very Hokkien. So there are a lot of names of dishes that I have no idea what they mean. So I don't know what Tri Kueh means.
My dad's side of the family is all Hokkien with a bit of Thai influence from Penang. So again, north and south, same dialect, but again, very different influences.
But essentially chi kueh are these tiny little saucer-shaped rice flour cakes that you can get in Singapore. I actually don't remember it in Malaysia. Not in my part of Malaysia. I don't know if you could get it in KL.
Yeah, you can.
Like that size?
Yeah.
Okay, I couldn't get it in Seremban, okay, so that doesn't make me a less authentic Malaysian. So a lot of Malaysians are like some of my harshest critics, okay? But just because I never encountered, I did encounter a different version of it.
Yeah.
They're bigger, okay? They're steamed in rice bowls, okay? And they're called wun zai dou in Cantonese, which means little rice cakes. Okay, little bowl cakes. Okay, chi kueh, I don't know what it means. Someone, I'm sure, will be able to fill us in. Yeah, and but anyway, chi kueh is made from rice flour, which we will get started making. How about I'll let you drive. I want about 150 grams of rice flour in there. So the Thermomix actually weighs for us as well. And my tummy is rumbling. I'm so glad you guys are far away and can't hear me. Now, the topping for it, essentially what we want to do is make the rice flour cake, and it needs some tapioca flour. I need about 15 grams of tapioca flour in there as well. Okay.
In the spring?
Yes. And it should be about equivalent to about a tablespoon, give or take. So rice flour and tapioca flour. Anyone who's been following me on Periscope knows that I've been covering 30 days, 38 ingredients. I haven't gone to rice flour and tapioca flour yet, so you guys are getting a sneak intro to what they are. Essentially, rice flour, a lot of people confuse rice flour with, when I talk about rice cakes, rice flour cakes, because I use this same batter is the same as what you get for fried radish cake.
Oh, right.
Yeah, which I use. It's very, very similar. There might be
you
like
just
little...
add the radish into the batter.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So you've got rice flour, you've got tapioca flour. Tapioca flour, tapioca starch, otherwise known as, this is the bag here. Tapioca starch essentially adds the softness and it helps to keep things together. Yeah. And rice flour is more al dente sort of thing, if you will.
Another fact about the Thermomix is really cool is that because it mills very powerfully, if you just had normal rice, you can actually make your own rice flour out of it. It only takes less than a minute.
Yeah, and that's how they used to do it in the old days as well. Right?
Pound it.
Yeah, they don't, they don't buy these in bags back in those days. Okay, so we've got that, and we want about 400 mils of water, so we're just going to add this in. I think that's all we need. So let's cover this and we're going to cook it. Now, obviously, if you don't have a Thermomix at home, guys, just so you know what you need to do, obviously, I didn't learn to make this using a Thermomix. I've made it before. But if you don't have a Thermomix, you would just basically combine all those ingredients in a bowl, add the water, and stir it till it's well mixed through. And then you put it in a saucepan and then just stir it gently. What we want to do here, okay, so we just want to mix it through. And now it's mixed through, we're going to cook it. Okay. We only want to cook it a little bit. Oh,
sorry.
That's all right.
Okay. Yeah, just looks very milky.
Yeah, just let me see. I don't know if we'll have trouble with something.
The good thing is that
Okay. So what we want to do is just thicken it up a little bit. You want to thicken it up to the point where when you're ready to transfer it into these molds, it's not going to settle during the steaming process. Okay, so let's set it at about 90 degrees for about 5 minutes. See how we go with 5 minutes? Like I said, we're not cooking it all the way through. We're just wanting to thicken it a little bit. And if you were cooking it over a stove, you just want to keep stirring it with a wooden spoon or a spatula, a heat-proof spatula, and just stir it till it starts sticking a little bit, okay? You don't have to cook it all the way, but even if you do cook it a little bit till it's a little bit lumpy, all is not lost. If it's lumpy, just remember it's still going to be a little bit gooey, and when you steam it, it should come out basically okay. So don't get too stressed out about how long you cook it for and how thick you get it, but ideally just enough, just a little bit of okay. And that's the same way, by the way. This thing is called chi kueh, and I'm guessing the kueh is the same kueh that we use in a lot of Malay kueh, okay? And kueh essentially refers to cakes. And with Malaysian kueh, do we have the lid on it? Okay, yeah, let's just cover it.
So did you want it at 60 degrees or
we'll have it higher. We'll have it about 90. Okay. Now, kueh in Malaysia just refers to generally a lot of cakes. They're not necessarily always sweets, but when you think kueh, you think of like snackies or like sweet snacks sort of thing. And I showed in my Periscope broadcast. Anyone on Google, on YouTube who hasn't been following me on Periscope, by the way, it's periscope.tv/JackieMSydney. So look me up there. Like I said, I've been running daily broadcasts called 30 Days, 30 Asian Ingredients. And by the time I'm done with 30 days, people like Stephen and One Thai Massage are going to be experts. Okay, I'm sure One Thai Massage is already an expert on Asian cooking. Now, so essentially what we want to do is just cook this, and then we're going to transfer them into molds. Like I said, back in my part of Malaysia, in Seremban, we have what's called little bowl cakes, Mun Chai Go, okay? And Mun Chai means little bowl, and Go is just cake, okay? And they tend, to be honest, to use aluminum, or what do you call it?
Stainless steel bowls.
Yeah, stainless steel or yeah, certainly metal bowls anyway, because the heat transfer better, but I don't have any here, and that's one of the struggles of living overseas, right? Zona spends her spare time just like
traveling around Sydney, just going for Asian
that's
pots
right.
and pans and cutlery sometimes.
That's right.
I think also because what we're going to do is we're going to steam the chee kueh right here on top of the Thermomix.
Yeah.
And what's tricky is we have to find little bowls that fit this size to be able to fit there. And a lot of Malaysian or Asian steamed cakes have these little bowl shapes and different shapes and sizes. There's even one that uses a square pan.
Yeah.
So we're kind of limited to the size of what we've got. But if you're just feeding for yourself and your little family, it's actually quite perfect size.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you know, I love the Germans because it's German engineering at its best, but sometimes I wish they had hired me as a consultant for the Asian dishes. So, yeah, Thermomix Germany, Vorwerk Germany, the manufacturers, if you're listening to this, Jackie M, look me up. But yeah, so we're going to just let this cook for a little bit, but let's go through some of the ingredients. Essentially, what you're going to end up with are like steamed like cakes, you know, we call them steamed cakes. And I mentioned earlier that there are a lot of confusion when I mentioned steamed rice cakes, because I use it in this dish called fried radish cake at my markets and other events. When people read the menu, they read it as rice cakes, as in those Western, you know,
a bit fluffy.
Yeah. Or either that, or they think of like basically rice that's been kind of like somehow compressed one way or another, but that's different, okay? It's not fundamentally different. I mean, it's still made out of rice, but rice cakes, you can imagine.
It's more dense.
Yeah, it's more dense. And the other thing I want to mention as well, experiment with this at home.
Rice disc.
Yeah, that's right. That's what people think of when they think rice cakes, okay? In Malaysia, we think of this.
Or the biscuits, like the Japanese rice biscuits.
That's right. Yeah, so yeah, it's different. Now, experiment with this a little bit. There are different recipes out there for this same dish. Some include using Asian wheat starch, which is again different to plain flour, because you think plain flour is wheat flour, but you know, Asian wheat flour is a little bit different. It adds softness to this as well. So you see recipes out there that include that as well. But to me, tapioca flour essentially does the job of that, so you don't really need that. And if you're going to go on a primer of different types of Asian flours, you can spend all day talking about it, because the same kueh, which is a Malay cake, going through different recipes, will have different combinations of essentially the same group of about half a dozen flours, okay, and some will omit one or the other, but that's generally because a lot of flours contain the same kind of properties. You know, some add starchiness, some add softness, some add the translucent
Some also have a different gluten content. Like when I was researching making pao, the white buns.
That's right.
You get a yum cha for the Australians. They like their yum cha.
That's right.
Well, they're actually high in gluten content, and that creates that fluffy elasticity. And then there's other types of Asian dishes where it's low gluten. So
that's right.
Texture.
That's right. So you know, just play around with it. If you can't find them, you know, just get Australian flours and see how you go. Okay, is this thick enough? Let's have a look. Okay, let's do it a little bit longer.
Would you add more rice flour to make
no. Okay. You want it quite light. You see, that's why she's the expert. Okay. Let's have it at 1.5. I'm just going to turn up the heat a little bit. Okay, we'll have it at 95. Yeah, so it stirs for you, so but otherwise if you don't have it, like I mentioned earlier, cook it on a saucepan on the stove and just keep stirring it till it thickens up, till it coats the back of your wooden ladle or spatula or something like that. And don't worry if it's not evenly thick, if it's a little bit lumpy, that's okay. Once you steam it, everything will sort of even out. But again, having said that, I know we Chinese, and I've mentioned this a couple of times on Periscopes as well, that we Asians are quite fixated on not just flavors and, yeah, we're very big on textures, how things slide, down your and how they feel in your mouth. They talk a lot about bounciness and smoothness and silkiness and that sort of stuff. So, it may pass muster in your household on the first or second attempt, but really the idea is to refine your recipe and the way you do it to the point where it's so silky smooth, it feels like you're just kind of like slurping this down.
Would you compare the texture that you're looking for to a custard? A thick custard?
Yeah, but a solid, sort of,
more solid,
kind of like, if you think of like a little bit denser than jelly, but yeah, that kind of idea is what you want to achieve. And this is actually a savory cake, by the way, not sweet, in case you were wondering. And now that we're on the topic, I'll just mention a little bit about the topping. So once this is thickened up a little bit, we're going to transfer it into these bowls. And like I said, we usually in Asia they use these metal ones, which will transfer heat better. So we would need to steam this a little bit longer than you would if you were using metal bowls. If you can find metal bowls anywhere in Sydney, anyone from Sydney, let me know, because I want to know. Otherwise, next time I'm in Singapore, I'm going to actually pick up some Chee Kway molds, okay? But we're going to use these ceramic just rice bowls. And then we're going to steam it in the Thermomix itself, and after that, we're going to make the topping, okay? The topping is kind of like, there are a couple of different recipes out there. The ones that I've been eating in Singapore in my last couple of trips are actually vegetarian. But you can play around with the topping, and I came across a recipe that uses dried shrimp. And I've had ones with dried shrimp before, but it's just because I associate Chee Kway with the vegetarian version because I've been eating it in Singapore, really.
Have you had meat versions before?
I've seen recipes for that as well, yeah, but I'm not, because I don't eat pork, I would imagine,
So they tend to be typically pork.
Yeah, usually they use minced pork in that, yeah. I have seen recipes for that, but yeah, usually dried shrimp. And again, if you follow me on Periscope, now the Periscope people will understand why I'm doing the 30 days, 30 Asian ingredients. And I used to run these kind of cooking broadcasts, not with the Thermomix. This is my first time ever running a live broadcast using a Thermomix. But when I used to do this, I'll be like, oh, this is rice flour, this is tapioca flour, this is dried shrimp and whatever, this is a radish. And at the end of it, I'll have half a dozen people complaining, tearing their hair out with no idea what you're talking about. That's why I'm doing the 30 days, 30 Asian ingredients, so everyone's on the same page what I'm talking about. But so we're going to, having said all that, I'm going to tell you dried shrimp as well, okay? This is what it looks like. And oftentimes it's actually larger. This is the cheapest variety of dried shrimp because I use it in my business.
Sorry to interrupt, Jackie, but I think it's getting
let's turn it off. Okay, this is good. So this is actually a little bit thicker than how I would otherwise have it, but that's fine. Like I said, we can still
play around.
Yeah, play around with it. So this is like porridge now, which is fine. So we're gonna, if I can get you to just grease these bowls with a bit of oil, and I've just got some residual oil here. I'll just. If you want to just grab the brush over there. Yeah, so dried shrimp, okay? This has been soaked, it's been sitting in my fridge. I just wanted to show you what it looks like. These are very tiny, and the reason they're tiny is because they're the cheaper version. And the reason why I just buy the cheap version is because I usually use it minced anyway, so it doesn't matter that it's not like nice, big, and gigantic. But at Asian grocery stores, sometimes it's found in the fridge or freezer section. Usually fridge section. Every now and then you might find it like unrefrigerated because depending on how much moisture there is in an existing batch of dried shrimp, it may not need refrigeration, but generally it's just good practice to refrigerate these sort of things because if there's any moisture in them at all, they won't last very long out of your fridge. And also dried shrimp can get quite expensive, okay? This one cost me, this is like basically the cheapest version, it cost me somewhere about like the low teens per kilo. but you can be paying that much per 100 grams if you get the good quality ones. And you know, like I said, because all I use this for is to mince it and add it to my laksa paste and that sort of stuff. I'm just using the cheap version. Okay. Now okay. Let's just transfer these into these bowls, and then we just want to smooth out the top a little bit as well. Now, I read online, this was new to me, I read online that now, usually when we do Asian steaming, we steam it in like usually bamboo or stainless steel steamers, those big round ones that everyone should be familiar with. And usually they would suggest sticking some tea towels around, you know, over the top and that sort of stuff, so the water doesn't collect and fall back into whatever it is you're steaming. Now, that apparently does not apply for this dish, because what happens when the water drips back down is that it creates a little indentation in the middle, okay? And apparently that actually works in the favor of this particular dish, because the indentation kind of gives it that unique look. Yeah, the indentation actually helps to hold the topping that you're going to put on top of it. So there you go. I know, right? Yeah. So trivia.
So you don't need it perfect. You can actually play around with it a little bit.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so
got one in there.
Yep. So we should have enough to get about 4 of these.
How many grams of the rice flour again?
150 grams rice flour to about 15 grams, give or take, of the tapioca flour.
And 400 grams of water.
400 mils of water, yeah. And the tapioca flour, like I said, just adds that little bit of a translucence to it. Usually when you're making rice cakes, it would be a balance of either or sort of thing. And the more water you use, the softer the product. And also, the more tapioca flour you use, I would imagine, would yield a more soft product. Okay, we're not going to try and get everything out. But like I mentioned before, back in my hometown, we used to make these very similar things called bunzaiko, which are these rice flour cakes steamed in rice bowls, or rice bowl sized bowls. And then what we do, we flip it out over, you know, before we flip it out, when it's cooked, we use a knife and score it in the middle. Okay, so you cut like a tic-tac-toe, kind of like scoring, and then you tip it out. So what you end up getting essentially are like cubes of them, and then you pour the sauce over it. And that's one of my fondest memory of eating this particular dish. It is a very, very popular breakfast dish, both in Singapore and in Malaysia as well. Okay, so all good with this? Let's get some water in here after that.
So we start steaming.
Yeah. And in fact, you know what? We can probably steam this off air, and I'll show them.
Yeah.
And then could I get you to just rinse this out so we can get started? So I'll show you how to topping, because everyone knows what steaming looks like. So if you had a Thermomix, I'm sure you'd know how to use your steamer. Otherwise, just any kind of metal steamer. And by the way, steamers can sit on top of woks, or they can sit on top of saucepans, depending on like how your your saucepans and stuff are configured. But you want enough water for it to not dry out during the steaming process. Usually, if you were using those metal bowls, you would steam it on high heat for about 20 minutes or so. When I tested this out earlier, I steamed it for 30 minutes just to be sure, and this is what I got. Okay, I'll tip them out now. Okay, it's a bit rough because I'm not very kind of like, I don't have a delicate hands when it comes to, that's why you don't see me make a lot of desserts and finger foodie stuff, okay, because I'm very kind of like, you know, wham bam sort of thing. But these are the rice cakes we've got here, and that was steamed for about 30 minutes in the Thermomix, and I'm just going to go through the ingredients we're going to use. Now, this is something I came across only after I moved to Australia. This is what we call radish. Now, I do know what preserved radish is, but in Malaysia, and still what you see a lot online nowadays, they generally refer almost universally, especially if they're cooking Asian dishes, or Chinese dishes, they universally refer to these radish that are cut in quite big chunks. They're probably about the size of like, you know, like that. And they would be just almost universally completely salty, and you have to rinse it underwater, and then you've got to chop it up and that sort of stuff. But of course, back in the day when I was running my restaurant, I didn't have a Thermomix to help me blend the radish. So I found these, and this is from Thailand, and it's also preserved radish. And you know, there's actually 2 different types of this, and there's one with a yellow label, this particular brand anyway, okay? Like I said, I keep telling everyone, I'm not getting paid to promote all these brands, I'm just telling you guys that's what I use so that we're all on the same page when you're trying to replicate my recipes. This particular brand comes in 2 varieties, okay? They look exactly the same, and I'm just going to cut it open. Let me just tear it open. And what it is radish that's been preserved. This has a blue label, and the one with the yellow label has basically more salt in it than sugar. Okay, I've got it. Here you go. And this is what it looks like. This is preserved radish that's already been minced for you. I hope you can see. Let me just take this up close to the camera. Okay. This is what it looks like. So light brown color. Okay, and for the Google Hangout guys, here you go. This is what it looks like. Minced preserved radish. And you would usually need to rinse it before you use it, okay? Just if nothing else to wash it out a little bit. But for the sake of this demo, I can't be bothered. It'll be fine, it'll all be cooked up. But this one has more sugar content in it, so it's sweeter. Now, usually if you look online, they'll say, oh, get the salted preserved radish, get the big chunky ones, rinse it in a lot of water, and then pat it dry, and then chop it up, and then cook it, okay? And we're going to cook it now, and I like lots of garlic. So essentially the ingredients we're using for this is the preserved radish, the garlic, and minced dried shrimp. You can omit the dried shrimp. Like I mentioned, in Singapore, the versions I've been eating did not have dried shrimp in them, okay? So let's mince this.
Scoop this away.
Okay. I'll let you do the garlic. Wow, there you go. So we've got the garlic all minced up in 1 second. And what we want to do is cook it with this preserved radish. Now, if you're wondering why this comes from Thailand, right, I found what they use it a lot in is in pad thai. So if ever you attempt to cook pad thai at home, that's certain. It's not just the sauce, it's not just the noodles, but there's the secret ingredient in a good pad thai. So I'm going to add this probably about the equivalent. I'm not measuring anything, and I'm not taste testing anything ahead of time. Okay. This is already quite sweet, but usually the recipes, because they mention the salty version that's been rinsed out and whatever, they would add quite a fair bit of sugar in it. Okay, I'm just going to add a little bit. Okay, and let's add some oil to this. And I've got some of this minced dried shrimp because I was experimenting with my Thermomix a couple of weeks ago, so I'm just going to throw that in. But like I say, if you don't have it, just leave it out. Okay. Yeah, a bit more, yeah. Because usually this particular dish, I remember one thing that stands out about this dish is that they use there's quite a fair bit of oil in it. Okay. Yeah, so let's cover this and just cook it on the highest heat setting for, we'll leave that open so it can breathe. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to let this cook, and then I'll show you what it all looks like at the end. If anyone got any questions in the meantime, hit Zona up. She's the Thermomix expert. Nothing? No? Okay, cool, radio. Yeah, but ingredients, what else can we say about them? Okay, the flours, this particular brand, that's the tapioca flour, and let's show them the rice flour. This brand looks like they've pretty much got the market cornered as far as rice flour, tapioca flour, and glutinous rice flour, which is another one. Thermomix available in the States. Apparently, it's just been launched.
It just arrived in September. So if you actually Google Thermomix USA, you'll be able to find them. I think at the moment on the West Coast. They started in the headquarters is somewhere either Midwest or some that way. So go and have a check.
There you go. Yeah. She's the expert. So what the Thermomix does for the uninitiated, because a lot of my followers are actually, for some strange reason, from North America. But the Thermomix essentially, it blends, it purees, it mills and that sort of stuff, but it also cooks for you, and you can steam, and it's got some automated settings where it, it can basically cook something for you once you put all the ingredients, go away, come back like 20 minutes later, and your risotto or whatever else is ready to go. Okay, so that's the beauty of it. Like I said, until 3 months ago, I really didn't know much at all. I didn't know anything about Thermomix. I thought it was a very expensive blender for rich people. But to me, having spent the last 15 years full-time cooking Asian food, cooking Malaysian food, stuff. Yeah, I know, right? That's why one thing I thought that this would be perfect in a lot of offices. There are offices that have kitchens and that sort of stuff. Yeah.
You don't need a stove. You don't need gas. You can cook everything. You can see. I don't know if you can see the steam there. So if we had more liquid, we could have even steamed the chenghui there.
Yeah.
So it actually can cook up to 4 different layers of food altogether, which would make 5.5 liters worth of food. You can steam a whole chicken in here too.
There you go. I know. How crazy is that? Like I said, one thing I've been making a lot of with my Thermomix.
Definitely right. Americorian, I think. Yep. You can definitely, because he said you can keep it in your dorm room. Perfect.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
Can have your full healthy square meals. You can have your breakfast in here.
Exactly.
Your desserts, anything practically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this is one thing I've been making. I've had a daily supply of this ever since I had my Thermomix, which is my sambal belacan. Sambal belacan, for those who don't know, is basically like a chili relish that's made with shrimp paste and chili and onion. Okay, and that was one of the most painful things to make, because for my business I use shortcuts because it was just so painful to make from scratch. But what I do now, I throw the onion in there, I throw my chilies in there, blend it, add oil and add the seasoning, and go away and let it cook for 45 minutes, and that's it. At the end of it, I get this sambal belacan. So it's just perfect for that sort of stuff. And another thing that's been quite surprising, is a discovery for me as well, is as a small household, just me and baby Noah, I tend to have a lot of leftovers. If I were roasting a chicken, or if I made Hainanese chicken rice twice. I had 2 whole chickens, and I only ate like a quarter of it each time. And I had all this chicken meat left over. And usually, what do you do with chicken meat? You think, oh, okay, yeah, I'll shred it and sprinkle it over noodles. But there's still too much of it, so I ended up throwing all the meat in the Thermomix, blending it, and then adding seasoning to it. And I got, this was actually fish, so I did the same thing with fish. And I got this thing here, which I'll just hold this up to the camera. Okay, this is fish floss, and I make chicken floss as well, and I make beef floss as well. Okay, use a couple of different recipes. So if anyone wants to hit me up, let me know. So this was fish that was sitting in my freezer, leftover fish fillets from IKEA that I forgot I even had, and that actually expired. So I thought instead of throwing them out, I'll just steam them in the Thermomix and then chuck them in and then mince them up and then let it cook. To be fair, I did, like I said, the Thermomix is not going to do everything from A to Z for you. It may do it from A to K or whatever. So what I did throw it in the oven for 15 minutes after that, just to crunch it up and give it that nice crispy texture.
I guess in the Western cooking, I think the texture, you would compare it to a chunkier bacon dust.
Bacon dust. There you go.
Yeah, so I know the Americans out there, do you love your bacon dust? I know you love your bacon. Yes, because I don't think there's anything else that would compare to it.
Yeah.
Even though we call it a floss, it's not like very floss.
Yeah.
It's actually still quite chunky.
That's right.
Grainy.
That's
it's
right.
a nice salted flavor.
That's right. You see a lot of, certainly in Chinese bun shops and all that, they talk about pork floss or meat floss. Because I don't eat pork, I used my leftover chicken to make chicken floss, and I think I finished it now. And then I made serunding, which is a Malay Indonesian also meat floss, condiment that you would sprinkle, especially very nice over sticky rice. But essentially it's same thing, but the serunding has more flavors to it. It's got curry flavors, it's got like coconut and even coconut cream, and you cook it till it's dry and it's just beautiful. Usually if you were cooking serunding, you would spend a whole day doing it. This to me just true, like I actually had some leftover lamb. Where did I get the lamb from? I forget even. I bought some cheap lamb cuts on the bone to make stock with, and then as I was straining the stock out to use, I thought, oh, there's still quite a lot of meat on the bones, and usually you would just throw it out, right? And it had practically no flavor, but to me, for serunding, it doesn't matter. So I chopped the meat in there and add like onion, mince it all up, add curry powder and other kind of spice ingredients, some coconut cream, and just let it cook by itself. If I was standing over a wok, I'd be sweating over a wok and just stirring it for a long time, making sure it doesn't burn. But because this does it, everything, I just went away, came back, and I had serunding. Again, I think from memory, the serunding, I chucked it in the oven for 15 minutes just to crisp it up. But the one thing about the Thermomix is that it hits a top temperature of 120 degrees. So to me, 120 degrees is not going to cut it for stir fries and that sort of stuff. Some people do use it to cook noodles with. You can do mee siam and KL Hokkien mee and that sort of stuff. I haven't actually personally tried it on any noodles. Okay, my claim to fame is actually a lot of wok frying, so it's not going to replace my wok anytime soon. Okay, unless again if the powers that be in Germany want to talk to me about increasing the cut-off temperature. So remember, guys, Jackie at JackieM.com.au, hit me up. Okay, so let's see how this is going. Okay, you can just see the steam coming through. Okay, we're just going to turn it on. I just want to check texture. Yeah. Okay, so it's boiling away. Okay, it's really nice. It's probably good to go. If you can see it, I'm just going to run up to the camera again and show you. Okay. You can't see the oil. You might just be able to make up the oil boiling a little bit. Okay, guys, there you go. That's what it looks like after about, 8 minutes or so cooking? Yep. Okay, so this is good to go. This sadly is a little bit cold, but because I'm just doing a demo. Usually you'll want to eat this hot. This is what it looked like. Okay. And that's your chwee kueh.
That looks good.
Now, in Malaysia, I mentioned in my part of Malaysia, we actually usually have a little bit of a dark sauce over it. Okay.
Closer up to the camera. Can
you
guys have a peek?
Can you see it? Okay, cool. Okay. Well, we'll take some photos and post it online. There you go. That's the. Can see that? Okay. So give it a shot. One of those things that I just realised everyone can see the crappy shorts I'm wearing. Anyway,
somewhere down here in Australia, so
yes, exactly. You see how casual I am. Okay. So anyway, thank you guys for joining us, and thank you Zona for coming along. This is our first go, and thankfully it looks as though my internet has held up. So we're gonna run this on a weekly basis, cooking demos using the Thermomix, and of course on top of that, if you don't know the Thermomix, like I said, my claim to fame is not Thermomix, my claim to fame is Malaysian, Southeast Asian cooking, so I will still be running other types of cooking sessions as well that don't involve the Thermomix, but this I just wanted to show you, because I've got Zona here, what it can do. And yeah.
We just sold the Thermomix in the US.
Good. Make sure you mention Jackie M. Maybe someone will give me some kickback. Thank you guys. I'll see you later. Let me just see if I can go.